Thank you. Good afternoon, members, officers, and any members of the public who are viewing this live stream of the meeting. And welcome to this meeting of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee. My name is Councillor Jeff Harvey, and I'm one of the two vice chairs of the committee. And I'm chairing this committee in place of Councillor Pippa Halings, who is unable to make it today. Climate and Environment Committee advises our Cabinet on actions required to achieve the Council's targets on climate change and its environmental commitments. Please can those of you present in the Council chamber note that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, is likely to be broadcast at some point. The camera follows a microphone being switched on, so councillors and officers are advised to wait a couple of seconds before speaking to allow the camera to catch up. Please can those participating in the meeting via the live stream indicate if you wish to speak via the chat column, and please don't use the chat column for any other purpose. Make sure that your device is fully charged and you switch on your microphone, switch off your microphone unless you were invited to do otherwise. Please ensure that you have switched off or silenced any other devices so that you do not interrupt proceedings. And please use a headset if possible when speaking and hold the microphone close to your mouth. When you're invited to address the meeting, please make sure that your microphone is switched on, and when you finish addressing the meeting, please turn your microphone off immediately and speak slowly and clearly, and do not interrupt or talk over anyone else. Okay, so now to the meeting itself. Patrick, do we have any apologies today?
Yes, Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Pippa Halings, and we do not have any substitutes.
Okay, thank you. And do any members have any items of interest to declare in relation to any item on the agenda? And if an interest subsequently becomes apparent during the course of the meeting, would they please raise it at that point? So has anyone got any conflict of interest? No, I think it's a no. So item 3 of the agenda, the minutes of the previous meeting on the 4th of October 2022. Are members happy for me to approve the minutes, or shall I briefly go through them? We have the minutes here on page 1 of the agenda. So page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Okay, so I think I can take it that those minutes are approved. Okay, so the first substantive item on the agenda is the Shared Waste Services Circular Resource Plan. And I think that's going to be Alex Snelling-Day. You're presenting that to us, of course, so if you'd like to proceed, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this paper sets out Greater Cambridge Shared Waste Services approach to that circular resource and how we encourage communities, people, individuals and businesses across the area to adopt that approach. So this is all about reducing waste in the first instance, not getting that into the stream and needing to be collected and disposed of. And the paper kind of sets out 5 key areas around how we'll work with partners in order to deliver specific schemes that help people to repair, reuse, and think about kind of alternatives from generating waste. It also focuses a particular area that focuses on food waste, because that's a particular issue in terms of kind of making up a proportion of waste that's within the black bin at the moment. So there's a focus on that. There's also our kind of comms and engagement programs around recycling. So that's working with schools, other partners locally to deliver recycling education, community events. It's also the work that we've done focusing in on waste electrical and electronic equipment as well. So the recent rollout of the pink bins that you might have seen collection banks across South Cambs and other areas, and our work with repair cafes to limit the amount of that type of waste that's generated in the first place. So hopefully the paper gives you an indication of what's been done to date, and also an indication of what will be done in subsequent years as we look forward to the next kind of cycle of events next year. And this is in the context of the Waste and Recycling Partnership across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as well, and how we work with partners.
Passing cars, and also a significant reduction in CO2 and NOx.
Sorry, so where I was saying, yes, so that's in the context of the strategy that we've got for the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as well, and working with partners to respond to kind of government guidance that's coming out from DEFRA around how we further implement these strategies that help us reduce waste. So happy to take any questions or comments that the committee has.
Hi, John Lockluck. Is it possible to put any indicators on these various activities which indicate either how they are progressing in terms of actual figures, values, and is it actually possible to enumerate what the goal is long term? And is this a substantial change to our carbon footprint, or is this really relatively minor? You know what I'm trying to get at? Just how do we quantify the value and success of these various activities in terms of the ultimate goal, which is carbon reduction?
Yeah, so there's two kind of aspects to that question, and my response is around how we. So corporately, we have KPIs that we report on quarterly around our performance, around recycling rates and the amount of waste that's collected, so we can kind of monitor it in that respect. In terms of our carbon footprint associated with that activity, again, that's reported through our greenhouse gas reporting. So, you know, a big proportion of our corporate emissions is around the collection activity of waste, so and recycling. So, and another item on this agenda will kind of come on to how we're addressing the decarbonisation of that collection aspect of it. There will be, you know, a piece of work that's being done to look at how we're working towards our carbon reduction targets, and part of that will be how all of these pieces of work, so this particular aspect of collection and how that works into that. So that should be coming in the next coming months in terms of that annual review. So we can make that a bit clearer in terms of how this activity, or how these activities in this programme directly feed into that. And I should say as well, there's quite a list of KPIs that we have for this particular work area, and they all feed up to that kind of quarterly report. So we can make sure that when we're doing this annual report to this group, we'll make that really clear about how that all feeds up together.
Yes, thank you, Alex, for that. I mean, I suppose what I'm really asking is a question outside the immediate bailiwick of the waste services. I'm totally committed to the idea that reducing consumption in general is a route towards carbon reduction globally, but that's obviously outside our scope in a way. But in the end, that's what we're looking for, isn't it? A general reduction in unnecessary consumption of many, many things. I'm not saying you haven't answered that.
No, that's going to say, you know, we do have our internal carbon reduction. We also have our commitments to those emissions in the district as well. So again, this links into that piece about how we're doing as an organisation, but also how we're doing as a district as well. So we'll kind of bring that information back to this committee, because that will help feed into that piece about the wider emissions.
Oh, Councillor Martin. Oh, Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. I used the pink bin in Morrison's car park a couple of weeks after it was rolled out, and it was pretty much full. So I would say on an arbitrary sampling, it was very successful to begin with. I'd be interested to know whether they continue to be used. I'm actually monitoring how full they are, how often they're emptied. Are they getting used?
Yes, so as you can imagine, some areas are more successful than others in terms of those bins. So we're definitely monitoring that and making sure that the collections are reflecting where we have an increased popularity of those bins. I think we're coming up to a kind of a 1.5 year point. So we have done some information around that performance, so we can share that with this committee as well in terms of those that particular the project. So we can share some of that information with you afterwards.
Councillor Martin Khan.
In terms of food waste, this has been trialled, and I can see the desirability of it aesthetically, that people don't like to think about food being wasted, but I just wondered what the impact, whether you've looked at the impact in carbon terms, because basically you're running an extra collection service, which requires, at least for the moment, until we've completely electrified our fleet, or implies carbon emissions, and quite a lot of additional carbon emissions compared with collecting just the black bin. Since you can't use food waste to feed animals anymore, presumably it will be either recycled by biodigester or something like this, if you can't, if it's waste food. What's the balance, the carbon balance on that, and what's the cost? How does it affect our emissions? Have you looked at it?
I don't think we have that answer to hand here, but as a whole, the carbon balance is positive if you collect food waste and treat it separately, either through composting or through digestion. And that's why central government is about to actually direct councils to collect food waste separately. So the overall carbon balance is positive. And as you know, we have a food waste trial that's been going on for quite a while. That's been very successful in diverting food waste away from the black bin and putting it to potential use. So to answer our question, it's definitely a positive carbon balance once the food waste is treated appropriately, i.e. through composting, where you can capture some gas, or through digestion. But in terms of the long term, we're still waiting for direction from central government because, like you rightly said, it involves quite a bit of additional cost because it's separate collection in terms of direction of travel. But there is definitely a positive carbon balance overall.
Councillor Paul Bearpark.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to make a kind of follow-up comment on that, really, in terms of the benefits of food waste collection. I seem to remember when the presentation was given on this about a year ago, was part of the reason for it was to make it more apparent to people how much food waste was being thrown away. Because I think there was a study done where they looked at black bin waste, and 43% of black bin waste was food waste, which was surprisingly high, given that we've got green waste bins that also take food waste. So obviously, as well as the carbon balance aspect as well, there's the potential to make it more transparent to people how much food they are wasting. I mean, I wouldn't really know in volume terms how much food I'm wasting, for instance, because it'll go in the green bin. I'm not measuring it, so I think there's another benefit to it as well.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question about the behavioural change campaigns that says the waste policy team are designing. I just wondered what issues they were being designed for at the moment.
So some of them focus on particular aspects of waste and recycling. So we've just mentioned food waste, and the barriers of why people are still putting their food waste in the black bin and not the green bin. So that's around a whole host of things around the actual method of separating your waste within your kitchens, around do you need a caddy, have you got the right setup in order to do that, have you got that information around the costs of some of that food waste as well. So campaigns obviously try and have that kind of co-benefit aspect to it. So are we helping people to both improve their sustainability and their impact on the environment, but also has that got benefits around reducing cost in terms of that food waste and actually what they're spending and throwing into the bin. So Campaigns are designed to look at those co-benefits as well as look at the barriers. So food waste is just one example. Electricals is another one around how people got access to kind of repair cafes and other methods of avoiding needing to put materials like that straight into the, to get rid of those materials. So it's very much a kind of looking at what is a particular aspect of waste, what are those barriers that stop people from kind of engaging with a particular method of recycling or avoiding it, and then trialling them as well. So the food waste trial is an example of where we've got that feedback from people around what's working, what doesn't work, what messages work and what messages don't work as well. So trying to devise campaigns that are specific to particular communities or particular areas as well. So there's a whole host of layers that go into making those campaigns and utilising expertise from kind of like national organisations, national charities that do this on a national basis and making them specific for our areas as well.
That's great, thank you. Seems like such an important area, so I'm glad to hear all of that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Councillor Bunty-Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I've always felt that start them young with the information about recycling and getting our children to put things in the respective bins. And I was just wondering how in your item D, how much do you go out to schools and community events, and with these warm hubs that are starting up, is it worth visiting those and taking the caddies? Because I always advertise in my newsletter about the caddies and putting food in those caddies and saying to people, let me know if you want one and I'll get the bags from here, and because they are so good. And just wondering if we could start doing that with the hubs, the warm hubs that are starting up.
Thanks, Councillor Waters. I think that's a really great suggestion. I'll check that we're doing that. We get a lot of invites to lots of community events and community spaces as well, and I think the community hubs are a great possible addition. We're probably already visiting some of those areas because by the nature of the work that we're doing, but I'll make sure that we're linked in and visiting at the hours when they're open, because I know they're open for certain hours. I think the caddies is another really important point. We're actually just doing a review of what we've got and how we get some of that, more of those caddies out into different areas across South Cambs as well. So, since COVID, there's been a change in terms of what sites are open and where people are moving about, and we just want to make sure that people have still got access to those materials that we've got. So, yes, there's going to be a push around getting more of that out for people to use.
Yeah, thank you. Just thinking of the wastage. The thing of the wastage comes directly from the excess, right? So having anything excess will actually lead to the wastage. The campaign can also be to buy less or buy exactly what we need for the day, for the week. So this is a cultural change, a cultural shift of the change. We need to develop this insight from monthly shopping to the weekly shopping. A small need we will definitely reduce in wastage. Okay, in anything, in terms of the food or clothing or plastics or whatever the liquid. So that's a cultural thing I really, if council can help, and also the recycling, the cereal, the food, the washing things, it need to be set up. This is, I think, the high time. A recycling center should have in every village, town, wherever we go, we should go with our own container, and we will just pick up that much amount of rice or pasta, and we will come back home. So that simple living will actually save this planet.
I think I wholeheartedly agree with your approach. I think it's, again, it comes back to the behavioural change side of things. This is not just talking about the waste when it's produced, it's about that initial upfront approach to how we live our lives and consume things within our lives. So yeah, I'd support that.
Just a follow-up statement. Regarding the behavioral changes, when we give them something, and from that point public picks it up, but unless and until the local government is also acting, offering the resources to come with their own container to pick up the right amount of pasta or wheat flour or rice. And this culture is not on them, this culture is on us. I mean, this action is on us, not on the public.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear that, Bode. Yes, of course.
I think just to add to what Alex was saying, we're very, very much supportive of that. In reality, it's a much bigger issue because, for instance, when we go to shop in Morrison's or Tesco or Lidl, it's a national, regional chain. But there is sort of direction coming from government, and I'm not sure that we've talked about this yet, but maybe we will do in later sessions. There's going to be directions to do with extended producer responsibility. So people that produce packaging, they will have an obligation to actually recycle that packaging. There's going to be new laws to do with deposit return schemes. So that, for instance, going back to many, many years ago, when you buy a bottle of, say, Coca-Cola, you actually can only buy it if you bring your empty bottle back. And then you now take the new one. So those are two very big changes that are being finalized at government level. It's been delayed. It was meant to have come out this year. We're expecting final directions by end of the year or early next year. And then we as local authorities will then have to respond to that and develop systems to enable us to collect those packaging, the return schemes. So that's coming. But it's not something we can act on locally because, like I give the example, it's much, much bigger than just the local shops. But there is enabling regulations coming from central governments that we will then have to implement very soon. So hopefully, maybe in the next 12, 18 months, when you go to buy your rice or pasta, you will have to bring your packaging and then just take the amount of pasta you need to get weighed out. So that's coming soon.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Redrup, you had another question, I think.
Yes, thank you. I was looking at the work on working with schools, which obviously seems really an important thing to do. And I just wondered if the schools that you're going to tend to have recycling facilities there, and if not, if that's something that could be looked at. So it's like a stronger message if you're being told about recycling and recycling is also available. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. We can make sure that when we're delivering an education programme, we've also they've got the means to follow up with that and have the actual the processes in place to actually follow through with those messages in that particular site. So yeah, I'll make sure that the team are following that up. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I had a question. I just wondered. I'm looking at page 7 and paragraph 9. So we've got a sort of 3 to 5 year sort of review cycle on waste collection, but and the circular resource plan. And I just wondered how that sort of 3 to 5 year timescale fits in with our sort of longer horizon to 2050 and our targets for reducing our emissions. I mean, I suppose if you sort of fast forward 20 years from now, we'd really hope that there was virtually no plastic that wasn't being reused in some way, because we know that, or at least very efficiently recycled. So is the reduction of our total tonnage of waste have we got a sort of target that's on that sort of 20 or 30 year time scale?
So there's quite a few different strategies and timelines that are overlaying and kind of at play here. We've got the kind of joint waste strategy that we have across a wider area, and that will be revised over the coming year or so. So that will help us to look forward. So we've had a period of that strategy being in place. We're moving into a very different period that has those that will kind of encompass those 2030, 2045, 2050 targets that we are all familiar with from a carbon reduction perspective. So that kind of we're at the point now where we are projecting what that looks like across the next period. As well, as Bode alluded to, we've got the kind of different schemes that are coming out of central government as well, around different ways in which waste will be collected. It's going to be a very different arena for that happening. So I would say I would come back to this group when we've got more of that strategy kind of set out, because I think it needs to be in context of what's happening across a wider area. Yeah, if that's okay with that the committee.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you members for the questions and officers for this very informative replies. Can we now move on to the next agenda item? So that would be an update on the Zero Carbon and Doubling Nature Action Plan, which I think, Siobhan, are you going to present that? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So, as you say, this is the Zero Carbon Doubling Nature Action Plan for your review and comment. And you will remember that this was brought to the last meeting, and there were many comments from the committee. Thank you for those. And the plan attached addresses most of the points raised. I won't go through all of these in detail, but I'll just pick up on one or two. There was some questions over the structure of the plan, which was in three parts. And when we thought this through, we actually thought it's better to present it as one integrated plan. So the work on our own estate and operations is now incorporated into the one plan, which is in 8 sections. And I just reassure you that we will address the matter of meeting our carbon reduction targets on our own estate and operations more fully at the annual review in May or June, where we will have the latest set of greenhouse gas emissions accounts for our estate and operations. The question of adaptation to the impacts of climate change was raised at the last meeting, and we'll address this next year and incorporate a section into the plan also. 5 actions relating to transport were left out in error, so thank you to Councillor Redrup for pointing that out, and we'll put those back in. The next update of the plan will be the annual review in May or June, where we'll put the work that the council is doing to support carbon reduction in the district in the context of the latest government data on how we're doing as a district. And after that, we will bring the Zero Carbon Doubling Nature Action Plan annually to the committee. So happy to take any questions, of course.
So members, any questions? I have one, if I may, just for starters. So I was looking at page 19 and paragraph 2.1, and I don't know whether that's just an omission there, because I was looking at the list of the 7 policy statements in the emerging new local plan that relate to climate change, and I wondered whether that should include GP/CC, which is the replacement for NH15, I think, relating to energy efficiency improvements for heritage buildings, which we're just looking at. I think this is the pre-publication copy of the first proposals document, but we've got this policy GP/CC, adapting heritage assets to climate change. I did have some concerns over that at the time this was published, in that it seems to be less ambitious than NH15 in its ambition, if you like, and in particular, talks about giving consideration to measures that will reduce climate change. And I think NH15 says, measures to address climate change will be permitted, something like that. So I was a bit concerned that actually there's a kind of backward step there. So I think that should definitely be put in the list.
So the ones that are included there are the specific ones in the climate change section, but if there are other ones, then we can certainly include those as well, yes.
Okay, thank you. Members, Councillor Shribona Bhattacharya.
Thank you, Yvonne. And in the page 16, if I can see that reduce the point number one, like the reduce consumption on resources and waste, that's point one. What I exactly describe or explain that waste directly comes from the excess. If we can reduce the excess shopping, excess doing things, we can come to that point. So I'm happy to see that. I'm also surprised that we all are keen to do something in our lifetime. In our lifetime, I mean, we all are keen to do, but we are also entangled in the process. Where to start, who to start, whom to talk in this process. I think every being can start at their point. So it's really not the black and white methods or the red tape procedures. I'm also very surprised, when I'm now 50 plus. In our childhood, I never heard of plastic problem. So that means solution itself stays in this planet itself. I never heard when I was in the school or college the plastic. It really collapsed and choked this world and planet. What I'm listening now, like what the now children, those who are the children in the school are continuously listening the one thing that plastic is choking this world. We didn't listen that. So if there was a clean planet one day, just 30 years before, 35 years back, why cannot we pick up the same solution? There's a clean solution. Why we need the red tape procedure? Why we need so much of like COP 26, 27, 28 and nothing actually comes from there? So this is again your point number 7 is very promising. The training, education, communication. This I think in the school level children, because it is their earth. We will live in 20, 30 years, whatever, but it is actually their place, their planet, their earth. So we can really work on that buy less, reduce really comes from there, like that present, the gift, the food and excess. So this is the point number 7 is very important. Solution is in your hand. You take it, lose it. Either you take it, either you lose it. We don't have much time. Thank you.
Thank you for that again, Councillor. If I can just comment that we very much would like to work with members and local residents, and I won't name names, but there's a parish that has stepped forward, and they want to be exemplar in terms of being the village that produces as little waste as possible. So we're going to work with them and trying to help them to reduce their waste generation. I think this came from an article some time ago in the press where there was a family. They hadn't actually brought out their black bin for almost a year. So it's possible. So I think if we can encourage residents, parishioners, if they want to do this, we are very keen to work with you. It's very simple. We won't collect the waste every fortnight. We can come every month and just give people the information, the education, home composting, recycling, and actually help them reduce their waste, buy less, buy only when you need it. But I think it comes from us all together. But if there are any more parishes or villages that are very keen and want to do this, absolutely, we will work with you and come and give them the information they need, and we'll make it happen. we'll stop the lorry from coming every fortnight, maybe come once in 2 months. And then that will force people to actually reduce how much they put outside. So I think what I'm trying to say is there's some things we can do locally with help of the local people, with your help, and we're keen to do that.
Thank you. You'd like to come back on that, Councillor Bhattacharya?
Thank you to hear that. I will just make a point. I know one village in the Himalayan village, in Bengal near Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Kashian, and one village in Gujarat. There's particularly this Himalayan village. They just banned in their local council, in the entire village, in that no plastic will be accepted. This is not the state level plan or national level plan, but they themselves, the council, and they just name and shame if anyone does anything against. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bhattacharya. I think Peter Sanford, Councillor Peter Sanford, you are next, so thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on Bodhi's comments, we only put a black bin out once a month, and then it's only half full. So, okay, there's only 2 of us in the house, but you can reduce your own personal weight substantially if you put your mind to it. That wasn't the point I was going to raise. On page 22, paragraph 3.1.3, regarding the use of biofuel in the council's own vehicles, councils agreed to deploy fuel use subject to budgetary sign-off on fuel costs. Has that been signed off, or are we still waiting for budgetary sign-off?
Thank you, Councillor. We put that proposal forward with the current budget bids, and I'm pleased to report that both SADC and Cambridge City Council signed off on that. So for next year, we're hoping to buy in upwards of 200,000 litres of biofuel. That's going to be maybe just less than a third of the fuel we use for our refuse collection fleet. So as we speak, the procurement team is now working very hard to try and secure that biofuel for April next year. So yes, we got the sign off on that.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Carr.
Looking at the decarbonising planning and land use, you separated transport and the planning issues. There's nothing really much about transport in the planning section 2, but the transport topics virtually all related to our own fleet and our own vehicles, apart from the electric vehicle charging points. It seems to me that we ought to be drawing attention to the fact that we have planning influence in transport, both in promoting active transport and the design of development. So it is a big important thing. And even in minor issues, one personal hobby horse of mine is the fact that we should, I think we should facilitate the access of storage of bicycles on properties, because that's very much encourages the use of active transport. At present, building a cycle store in the front garden is front of the building line needs planning permission. But Scotland, for instance, has done has a local development order which permits you to do certain size and shape of a cycle store in the front garden without planning permission. And I feel these sort of simple issues might facilitate the use of active transport. But these are some of the topics I think we need to mention about transport in the planning session as well, separately, or mention about planning in the transport section, but one way or the other.
Yes, so there are actually 5 actions which failed to get transferred into the new plan and will be moved back in. But they are working through the combined authority, develop and implement a strategy to decarbonise transport, through the Greater Cambridge Partnership, develop and implement the City Deal-funded sustainable transport initiatives, support the development of the County Council's active travel strategy, support community-led active travel projects through Zero Carbon Communities grants, and finally explore the feasibility of community car share schemes with rural coverage. And just to come back on the facilitating cycle storage, that of course was part of one of the Zero Carbon Community funded grants in Milton. and some cycle storage on some council, in a council-owned block of flats there. And so that project is a sort of pilot for that work, and we will be looking to see whether we can do that in other council-owned buildings. But yes, I mean, I would certainly agree that that is a good thing to support.
Thank you, Siobhan, for that, and thank you, Martin Khan. Lisa Redrup, Councillor Lisa Redrup, I think you had another question.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. It was again related to the transport, and I just wondered if we might like to reference the local plan and the transport sections of that from the infrastructure section. Thank you.
Good idea. We can certainly do that. Yeah.
Okay, I just have one more question, if I may. I'm referring to page 30 and 31, section 8.11. I just remember how good that short film that we did for our Climate and Environment Week, was it last year, showing new farming practices, and Martin Lyons, I think, was appearing in one of them, showing the benefits of cover crops in terms of both storing or sequestering carbon and increasing carbon content of soil, but also holding up heavy rainfall and potentially allowing sort of greater infiltration. It seemed to have so many benefits. I understand, this is happening more and more widely, and farmers are adopting that practice, but I just wondered whether there's any way that we could find a sort of scheme to enable farming practices like that to attract biodiversity net gain credits, where we're looking for sort of off-siting biodiversity net gain. Because if you think about it, there's an enormous scale available there when you're talking about farmland compared, for example, with building a soakaway to a house. It's a quite a limited rain catchment. And it could be sort of huge benefits, not only in terms of retaining more of our rainfall to recharge the aquifer, but also providing winter food for the ecosystem. But obviously, it's a little bit tricky, because that's a kind of ongoing year-by-year farming practice, rather than something that is sort of concretized, if that's a word, at the time of the development. So it has to be a sort of way of sort of getting an agreement that that practice will be ongoing into the future, and that could be an alternative to sort of more traditional approaches like sort of back boxes and so forth, but possibly more effective. Councillor Paul Bear-Park.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to provide, I suppose, some feedback on 3.3.5. So it was great to see the launch of the EV charger grant scheme. And I suppose I've had a little bit of feedback on this myself from parish councils in terms of their willingness to take this up. And it's a problem, and I don't have a solution, so open to members and officers for any advice on this. There was a bit of reticence because they were concerned that effectively they were going to have to dedicate a particular parking space within their car park to electric vehicles, and that would kind of mean a loss of a parking space. And the problem is that often, especially parking around recreation grounds, is you end up with situations where there may be football matches on or something, and there are a lot of people who want to park at the same time. So there was concern of the loss of the parking space for the electric vehicle setup. And I just wondered if anybody has any comments on that about, are there are there ways of overcoming that reticence is probably the question I have.
Thank you. Councillor Bear-Park.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I think I will ask officers to go away and just look at options for how you put signage, whether people are dedicating that space or whether there's options to be more flexible around the use of that space when it's not being used by a car to be charged. I'll come back to you in terms of, we've been working with a couple of different parishes, so we're building up a bit of an experience around how that works. We've also got our sheltered housing schemes as well and charge points that are going in there. So we'll come back to you specifically around a bit of feedback of options and possible solutions.
Thank you. Councillor Henry Batchelor, you had a question, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Henry Batchelor, Lead Cabinet Member for Environmental Services. Just on that point, actually, I was going to perhaps make a suggestion. Whilst officers are exploring that, it might be worth exploring with colleagues in the planning department as well about potentially making it easier to apply for, say, parish councils to change a piece of, say, communal land or, publicly owned land into a specific car parking space for an EV charging point. So then, villages aren't losing an already dedicated parking spot, but they are in fact creating a new one. Whereas planning might have been a barrier to that previously. It might be worth officers exploring that with planning colleagues to see what the appetite there would be in trying to make that more feasible. Just a thought.
Thank you. Any comments from our officers on that?
Yeah, we'll follow that up. Great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, Councillor Lisa Redrup, another question.
Thank you. This is on the 8.4 enhance opportunities for nature through our work managing watercourses. It mentions that we'd move forward by looking at supporting local nature conservation groups by exploring joint working initiatives. And I just wondered if that was specific to the awarded watercourses or if that was a more general action. Thank you.
So, I mean, the answer is I'm not entirely sure whether our watercourse people are able to work with groups, with local groups on ditches that are apart from the ones that we're managing. But we can certainly find out and get back to you, unless you know. Yeah.
And I mean, I can add to that in the sense that as part of the process is to keep the water courses, the ditches clear. What we try and do is be sensitive to the potential growth of biodiversity around their wildlife. So there's a way the operational sequences, they sort of promote growth of wildlife. And I think we have quite a few success stories, water voles that have been able to, I can't remember which parish that was in.
We've got this in Histon.
In Histon. So yes, they do take that into account. But in terms of working with, we're asking about working with specific organizations. Was that your question? We can look further into that. But the operatives are definitely aware of, I mean, there's a few things they do. For instance, they don't completely clear the ditches on one side. So sort of they promote vegetation so that we can have some wildlife there. So there are a few things that they do. But in terms of working with other people, we can take that forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. I just meant, is it a more general helping people in all different villages where there might not be awarded watercourses? That was just the gist of the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John Lovelock.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question about the EV charging points across the district, across the county. I mean, I see there is a reference to a CPCA study and that you fed into. Where are we? Very much at the beginning, I'm sure, but how are the targets defined? How many years out? If there a document you can point me at that I can look at which summarises where we are, where we're trying to get to, and what kind of feedback we're seeing from residents who don't have their own private charging point as to how much they're being inhibited by the lack of public charging points at the moment. Just wondered what just a few lines, just a few sentences, and then point me at a report I'll happily read. Thank you.
Such a report is being, well, there's a strategy that is being worked on at the moment, and our Luke Waddington is part of that kind of steering group into that, but there is no publicly available report on that that I'm aware of yet, but we'll keep you posted.
Dr. Councillor Martin Khan.
The concern that I have is linked to the to section 8 in terms of 8.4 really, in terms of, well not 8.3, the earlier 8 ones, about the opportunities for nature and our own estate. We're the only district in the whole of Cambridgeshire that doesn't have our own parks and green spaces service. Everything is managed by contract. It's very much more difficult to manage if you don't have direct control and improve. I know at the moment financially it's not on the cards, but have you got a longer term, do you see this as a longer term benefit in looking at the way that we manage our spaces and seeing whether we want to take some direct control rather than putting matters out to contract? Or do you think that won't help?
We do not have any such plans at this point in time, but in terms of our overall approach to doubling nature, we are developing a strategy in terms of what can we do, because we don't have our own assets, we don't have our own land, so we have to work with others. That's very much work in progress, but we should be able to share that doubling nature action plan, so to say, very soon. But in terms of any other plans to provide our own recreational land, there is no such plans that I know of at the moment.
Thank you. There are no further questions. I just have one final question on page 35, 8.5. I just wonder if you could be reassured that the A14 sort of planting seemed to be such a failure that it's almost, it's a new project, isn't it? And whether, is that able to be part of this environmental legacy fund that it mentions in the right-hand column, or is it a remediation of an existing project? And if it is there any money to do that, and is anything happening?
So that's around the A14, do you mean the trees that have died? Yeah. There's a lot of work going on around that, but I'm not personally in the loop on that. I don't know who would be. Do you know? I think actually it would be our planning, it would be the planning enforcement team. And so I wonder if we could get you an update on that. I know there is a lot of effort being put into sorting out some kind of a solution. So we can look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. So I think, we have one. Sorry, one further question. Yes, Councillor Bunty Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from 8.5, I was interested to see that you've got 8 opportunities have been identified and being reviewed internally by Highways England. Highways England are very difficult to get hold of and to find out anything or to get anything done by them. And I wondered if you could identify who these are, if you do have these identifications. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally awaiting an update from them as to this scheme, but I can certainly, we can include that information in the next time that this comes back to you, where the locations for those are. We have a specific area in Bar Hill where I would be, the parish council would be very interested to know. So anything you could get back to us would be grateful.
So I think with that, are we ready to move on? Yes, okay, thank you. So Alex Sellingday, I think it's your turn again. So you're going to update us on the Waterbeach Renewable Energy Network business case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper sets out a kind of overview of the business case that's been completed for the Water Beach Renewable Energy Network, the REN project. So this is a project looking at a solution to our electricity capacity at the Water Beach depot, and in order to enable us to charge more electric refuge collection vehicles on site. And obviously that transition to more electric refuge collection vehicles is a key part of our decarbonisation plan for fleet, and then obviously leading into a key part of our net zero plan as well. So the business case sets out, the scheme includes a solar voltaic array, it includes battery storage, it has an energy management system, a brain, which essentially controls that energy and optimises performance. And then it also has a network of the chargers specifically for charging those types of vehicles. And it has a collection, kind of point of connection into the grid as well. So the business case kind of concluded that we need to invest in this project. We are not able to charge more vehicles on site after the third one is in operation. We looked at options of kind of upgrade to the connection to the grid versus this microgrid solution incorporating the solar and the battery. And it came out that it's actually a lower cost of energy to implement the microgrid option versus that straight kind of grid upgrade. It also looked at the resilience that we get in order to, from having the solar generation on site and the battery on site as well. And it looked at how much carbon saving we'd actually be able to achieve as well. So the next stage for this project is obviously kind of having done this bit of work around the business case, is to move on to kind of that implementation plan and the kind of detailed design and kind of progressing the project in that way. So the business case has been, if you'll remember from last time this was updated, so this project is funded through funding from the Combined Authority. The business case for which went to that final committee, I think it was last week actually, and we had the agreement that the £2.7 million would be put into the project. And then the remainder of the project cost will be shared between the Cambridge City Council and South Cambs Council as well. So we're at that point where we've reviewed this business case, we've kind of got this technical solution, and it kind of stands up for a business case perspective, and we're moving into that kind of implementation phase and looking at how we move forward with the project. So I'm happy to take any of the questions that you have on this. It is quite a technical project, so I will I will answer the best of the questions I can do here, but if I need to go away and get any more information for you, I can do. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Alex. I have a question from Councillor Martin Khan.
I was interested to see the scheme and that you're planning to have a battery system, but there's a great difference in the production in winter and summer. For instance, I've got a Solar Together scheme. My maximum production of my unit, my panels in the summer was 22 kilowatt hours a day. 2 days ago, it was 0.1 of a kilowatt hour. That gives you sort of the range is tremendous. And the production in the month of December is 50 kilowatt hours, and in summer it's over 400, so that's 8 times, a factor of 8. So I'm just wondering how you're going to manage the Christmas, the winter period, the 4 months a year where there's the least generation. Is your battery going to take energy from the grid when necessary? How are you going to, otherwise you would need to increase the grid for the winter period. Is that the way it's planning to do it, or are you planning to rely totally upon the your own renewable generation?
So I'll try and give quite a simple answer to quite a complex question or a complex kind of task that's been undertaken. So that energy modelling has taken into consideration the fact that we need that demand of electricity evenly across the year, despite the fact that our solar will kind of generate at different rates. So the way in which the microgrid is set up is that kind of annualised over the year. you're looking at that split between solar and grid. So solar is 65% and the grid is 35%. So that battery is able to charge and discharge from both the solar, but also the grid as well if we need it. But the whole point of this is to maximise the solar that we're generating on site and only have that grid demand at the times of the year when we particularly need it. So when there's kind of less.
Presumably presumably you have a maximum that you can charge from there because the grid is. So would you be charging at off-peak periods or in the daytime when the vans are out? How would you manage it, or at the weekends? And how much will the battery have sufficient, for several days to charge up the whole of the fleet, or how will it work?
So again, I'll give quite a simplistic answer. Again, the way in which this is set up is that you have that power management system that monitors all of this for us on our behalf. So we have kind of almost inputted what we need in terms of the charging capacity, when we charge vehicles, how many we're charging. So we've got lots of data around that information. That feeds into the microgrid that controls whether we're drawing from the solar direct, the battery, or from grid via the battery, if that makes sense. And this feeds into quite a complex model across that year. I should say as well, this project has an energy performance contract that sits kind of above it. So what we're getting is that contract. We are saying we need X amount of kilowatts at specific times, and that has to be a guaranteed generation because this is this is an operational service. It has to maintain that operational capacity as well. So that arrangement sits above how the microgrid functions as well.
So an energy performance company then will take on the responsibility and they will have to deliver. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Redrup.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a bit of a complex question, I guess. It's about the business case and whether it takes into account the rate of vehicle acquisition, because obviously the level of energy and the cost benefits vary depending on whether you've got 4 or 24. So I was just wondering about that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we, obviously there's been a lot of budget discussions recently around vehicle purchasing and on all of that kind of budget setting for the next X amount of years. And so we've been able to feed that quite granular information about, okay, so we order a vehicle in a particular month, we know when it's going to be in operation. So we factored in when vehicles are going to be in operation and actually drawing that down. We are building out the system to have that capacity from day one, but we've got that modelling in place that shows when vehicles are coming on board and how many we've got at a particular time, so we can kind of build out, so we're using that over a period of time. So yes, that's factored in. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. How much of this is proven technology and how much are we being guinea pigs? For the last 4 or 5 months, I've been watching the work not being completed on the car park, and that's obviously a simple project compared with this. So I'm wondering, what are the risks?
Thank you. And I think in terms of proven technology, very, very much so. We're using proven and tested solar panels, batteries, and cabling. So I think just to reassure everybody, it's definitely proven technology. The issue about delays to the building and to the car park is a bit different. It's the same company, so I think it's a fair question to ask. And that's the stage that we're at now. And that company, I think, to be fair to them, they have delivered several solar projects in the county. They've done St. Ives car park, they're doing Birmingham. So I think we know that they have successfully delivered several solar projects across the country, not only in the county. But in terms of delays, that's something we're very, very aware of. And before we move to the next stage of implementing, constructing, we're pausing and doing a detailed review and trying to put in place several checks and balances before we press go.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Bearpark.
Thank you very much, Chair. I suppose this is a comment really on the pace of the development of the grid within the UK is astonishingly slow, and I think the DNOs are constrained in what they can do. They should be doing a lot more, and it constrains projects like this. It's constraining other projects around Cambridgeshire about how they're connected into the grid. I mean, I don't know what the solution is other than some change in government policy, which allows the DNOs to make more investment. But it seems astonishing to me that, that there won't be sufficient connectivity into the grid here for the grid to benefit as much as it might from this system when there's excess capacity. Those companies could benefit from charging for being able to transport that electricity from the solar site to wherever it's needed. I suppose another, and related to this, is obviously the build-out of Waterbeach Newtown, almost next door to this, which will be effectively an electric town. There won't be any gas boilers. It will be all electric heating. There will be every house that's built will have an electric vehicle charger put in. I mean, we could be talking about the first kind of fully electric town in the UK. And I do worry that the ability of the constraints that are there to build out the grid will actually constrain the development of Waterbeach Newtown as well. And I do think the council should be making more of an effort to air concerns to the government about the constraints on not only our renewable energy projects, but also our development of our new towns and the electrification of those new towns, because it is going to be a serious problem. I am astonished that the GCP is having to put money into this. I understand why they're doing it, but it seems we're putting constraints on this that are totally unnecessary.
Thank you. Perhaps I could comment on that, because it's a topic which greatly concerns me too, but and maybe this is something that also needs to be pushed at a national level. I think Councillor Hayling, through her role with the LGA, organisations like UK 100 are also making representations. It is a disappointment that the Rio ED2 pricing period for, that's a price control period that Ofgem sets, which determines how much money distribution network operators and National Grid are allowed to collect from customers in order to spend on infrastructure. And it used to be the case, certainly at the time the southern Cambridge grid reinforcement work was being looked at by GCP, that there was actually a legal barrier to UK power networks getting involved because they legally weren't able to spend ahead of need. But in this next price control period, Rio ED2, that legislative blockage has been removed, and yet UK power networks don't seem to have noticed in many respects, because their business plan majors almost exclusively on the digitalization benefits they call flexibility, which is trying to get more out of the existing infrastructure by, for example, signaling to an EV that's charging that, we're running out of power, so can you stop charging for the next half an hour and then switch back on again? But I think that's unfortunately a one-off digitalization bonus, and what I'm picking up is that that will soon be used up. There's no way that that mechanism would cope with Councillor Bear Park's example of the Waterbeach Newtown. And in any case, there's no new capacity available at the Burwell supergrid connection until 2032. So I think very much this council needs to bolster its kind of communication channels with both National Grid and the distribution network operators to sort of put pressure on. But I was going to ask on that basis, perhaps, Alex, whether you've had any experience of how this flexibility network mechanism might work for us, and you know, is it actually a way forward?
It is something that we'll look into more about when we've actually got some, you know, these generating assets that can play a role within that function. So previously we've not had assets of that size that could play into that market around the flexibility services that you're talking about. I think the REN project itself, we will look at, so when we're in those first few years, when we finish the kind of build out, and we don't have all of the vehicles that are using the generation that what we're generating, we will look at options around how do we provide flexibility to the grid and whether we do that. There's a lot of kind of factors that have to come together to make that possible in terms of where it, you know, the siting of it, whether there's actually, that is within a flexibility zone that's kind of advertised, and those things will need to come together, but it's definitely something that we've talked about for this project and seeing what role we can play in supporting that going forward.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to sort of say, you know, thank you to the team that are working on this project. I think it's ticking so many of our boxes. You know, it's an investment, and there's never a better investment than one that reduces your own costs, because that's sort of cutting out the middleman. Fantastic work getting the grant from the combined authority, I think, and it's working well for them because it's you know, they're struggling, I think, to find projects where we can say we invested this money and it's produced this local benefit. So, and I think it's really a wonderful kind of example of the work that we're doing in green investment. So, thank you very much. Have we got any more questions? Oh yes, Councillor Martin Carr.
Just a bit longer term. I agree with what Councillor Harvey said about the project. It's a great project. But, I don't know exactly how at the moment you deal with biodigestion of the organic material that comes into the waste sorting centre. And I don't know how the balance is dealt with between county and district, because obviously the disposal of it is actually the county matter. But have you looked at the generation of biogas from the material, not just the waste, the food material, but also the stuff around compost and the paper element in the blue and black bins? And have you thought of that possible generation from that means? Because that is more evenly spread through the year, it's more manageable, and you can store biogas as well. So it's perhaps one of the more useful renewable energies if you can do it. And also you can use the heat and since you're close to the new town, that might be a possibility. I just wondered whether that had been examined.
Yeah, so two parts to my answer. So I mentioned the kind of joint waste strategy, working with partners, because as you rightly say, we're a kind of waste collection authority, not disposal, but the two need to work really closely together. So that strategy will look at all of that kind of end-to-end cycle. And you're right, that, you know, there will need to be this looking of kind of different opportunities and different ways in which we derive benefit from any waste that's occurred. So there's that side of things. In terms of ourselves as a waste collection authority and the fleet of which we have, we've always talked about the fact that we'll have electric vehicles. We've got the introduction of the HVO use within the other vehicles, but our future kind of makeup of our fleet will probably have a range of different fuels and alternative sources. So yes, that will be something that will be played into that discussion as we move forward and kind of derive at that, getting that final piece of decarbonisation of the fleet coming forward. So yeah.
Thank you. So, are there any other questions? If not, I could close that item then, and which is the last item on the agenda, except for the forward plan and the date of the next meeting. The next meeting will be on Thursday, February the 2nd, 2023. I don't know whether there are any particular items of concern that members would like to raise that might be considered to go into the agenda for that meeting. I mean, there's probably still time to sort of feed that in if anything should occur to us in the meantime. But, oh, sorry.
We're planning an item on the doubling nature work that we're doing at that meeting, so I just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with, Councillor Bhattacharya.
No, this is not related to the meeting, we can end here, but I'm saying that the Christmas is coming and we can always say, do not buy the plastic toys anymore, buy only the flower pots and beautiful flowers for the family and friends and everyone. That's the kind of thing we can do. And one more thing, this is out of the meeting, I think it's finished here, it's not for the minute. My own faith also helped, my own faith, like Hindu or the Sanatani religion, helped me for not to waste the food on the plate. Because we have a concept of the Lakshmi. Lakshmi is a goddess of wealth. So if you waste any food on the plate, Lakshmi won't come to your house anymore. So this type of kind of the faith related conversation sometimes help one certain type of population also.
Yes, thank you for that. And well, thank you for reminding me to wish everyone, whatever their religion or not really, a sort of we all got opportunity to be with our families and enjoy some time of reflection.